A common technique that can be used by an attacker to sneak in or out data in an environment is the concept of steganography. I'd like you to imagine with me Bob just for a moment, who's at this computer, and let's think about the types of data, sensitive data that Bob might have access to. Bob might have access to sales data that is proprietary to the company, that if a competitor had that information, it might be harmful to the company. Or perhaps there's a new marketing campaign that's about to be released that, once again, if it fell into the wrong hands, such as a competitor, it could be harmful to Bob's company. Or maybe Bob works for a security company and has keys involved. And these digital keys, they could be private keys that are being used for things like maybe Bitcoin or Ethereum, or they could be private keys that are being used with digital certificates, which, once again, if those are released to unauthorized individuals, that could cause harm to Bob's company. So just for a moment, even though Bob has been so good to us over the years, let's say that Bob becomes disgruntled and he wants to smuggle some of that information out. Maybe there's Excel spreadsheets or Word documents or long strings of keys. Bob could use steganography to do that. And steganography is all about the concept of hiding a secret, for example, the marketing plan, the sales data, or the keys within another file. So if Bob sent an email to his home email address, maybe he attaches an MP3 file to that email, or maybe he attaches a JPEG, or perhaps he attaches an Excel spreadsheet, which, if we examine them, would all look innocent and not like they had anything confidential. But if Bob used those files, one or more of those files, as a carrier, he could embed the hidden content in those files, and then when Bob gets home and he opens up the email, he can extract the actual content, the sensitive information, from the carrier. And not only can the secrets be embedded in a carrier, but we could also add on top of that encryption, so that even if somebody did see the file and started going through the details of it, unless they knew the keys involved regarding the encryption, they wouldn't be able to extract any secrets if they didn't have the right keys. And there's lots of applications that are readily available to do this type of steganography. One application is called Snow, and it's kind of interesting. Snow is called Snow because it uses white space. If we had a text document with, let's say, 1,000 lines in it, if we have additional spaces or multiple spaces or tabs at the end of each line, just looking at the document, we're not going to notice that there's extra white space at the end of a line or two. However, by manipulating that white space, we can encode additional data into that document. So in that example, the text document, the .txt file, would be the carrier, and the encoded information would be part of the white space and tab information that is embedded as part of that document. And the tool I'd like to do in this demonstration is called OpenPuff. And what I think would be fun to do is for you and I to walk through taking a confidential data file, embedding it into a carrier, and then we'll also take a look at how we could extract that sensitive information on the receiving side of that carrier file. Now, as a test, let's do this. I have OpenPuff open right here, and I've got a folder for OpenPuff, and I have source files. I've got two MP3 files, and I've got a little text file that we're going to treat as our secret document. And for a moment, let's just verify that we can listen to one of those. Let's pick Coast to Coast, and I'll simply play it. So I'm going to go ahead and stop that. In fact, I'm going to close that program. And let's use this MP3 as the carrier, and we'll go ahead and embed this little secret document as an encrypted file with steganography inside of the music file. And just for fun, let's go ahead and open up the secret document. And there's this secret document contents. All right, sounds great. Also down here, I've got this results folder, and I have a separate window of that results folder right here. And that way we have a separate window to see when those show up. So the first thing we're going to do is going to go ahead and click on the hide button inside of OpenPuff. What it wants here is it wants 3 passwords. Now, if we want to simplify this, we can say, you know what, forget B and forget C just for demonstration purposes. I just want to use a single password. So we put the password in. Now that password that I just entered is part of the key that is going to be used to encrypt our secret file into the carrier. So that's step 1. Our next step is step 2, identifying the file that we want to encrypt and hide. So I'm going to go ahead and use the browse. So we're going to select this secret document. And right here it's showing us details regarding that file. One of the things we'd want to be aware of if we're trying to encrypt a huge file, we might need a huge carrier or multiple carriers to hide that data. For example, if our carrier was 20 bytes, the carrier would not be big enough to pull that off. So our next step, step number 3, is to go ahead and identify the carrier that we want to use. So we'll click on the Add button. And I think the one we agreed to is Coast to Coast. So let's go ahead and use Coast to Coast and click on Open. And if we wanted to add a second carrier, we could simply click on Add, And we'll grab this blues song as well. Now the reality is that our little text file is so small, it doesn't even need this second file, because the first file as a carrier is big enough. Now under bit selection options, if we go over to MP3, now the most important aspect over here is to make sure that for the decoding, the person who's doing the decoding knows which value we used. So part of the secret for the encryption is going to be all the passwords that we used, the actual name or names of the files we used as a carrier, and also the bit options that are set over here. So in this case, we're not using blues country at all, so that won't be an equation for the decode. And then once we're done, we simply click on Hide Data. It's asking us, where do you want to put this? I'm going to say, go ahead and put it in the results folder. Click OK. And this little warning message is simply saying, hey, that second carrier file isn't used. So when you do the decode, you don't need to mention blues country as part of it. And there's our new MP3 file. So I'm going to click on OK. There's a little summary of what happened. I'll click on Done. Now, if we wanted to play this MP3 file, we could do that. And it plays just like it did before. Except if we looked at the details of this file in the results folder and the coast-to-coast file in the source folder, this one's going to be slightly bigger because it has the secret document text file encoded into it. So now the next piece is, how do we extract that out of it? Let's say we're on the receiving side and we want to extract our secret document out of this MP3 file. We simply go to OpenPuff, click on Unhide, and put in our password. And I'm going to remove the passwords for B and C because I didn't use those options to encrypt it. So we need to have the same exact information or key that was used during the encryption for the proper decryption. So the second step is to identify the carrier. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Add Carriers. And I'm going to go to the results folder, and there's our coast-to-coast file. So I'll go ahead and select that. And under MP3, it's currently set at medium level, and that's how it was encrypted, so that should work as well. So all we need to do here is click on Unhide. And now it's asking us for the location of where it should put that decrypted secret document file that was encrypted in the carrier. I'm going to put it also in this results folder down here. We'll click on OK. And it says it's done. There's a little summary, and here's our secret document right here. And if we open it up, we now have a copy of that original document. In this nugget, we've talked about and demonstrated how a malicious user can hide content and move it around. For example, via email or file sharing using steganography techniques. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.